Hey everyone, this is Mad Hatter here again with yet another YouTube video. Today I am going to be showing you how to download and do a basic setup of your MongoosT-50 CM2 throttle. But before we get into that, I need to fill you in on a little bit of a caveat here. The software for Virpil controls or any control, throttle, um, grips, or rudders or whatever. It's not very intuitive. There's a big learning curve involved in getting things set up and stuff like that. There's a lot to it. um, some of the other softwares out there for other grips and stuff like that. They're more straightforward and stuff like that. Virpil controls, I mean, in a few areas it is straightforward, but in a lot of areas, I mean, you really have to watch what you're doing sometimes before you'll mess things up. But anyway, you just have to be careful. But with that out of the way, without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump right into it and get started. First of all, we'll go to the downloads page, and you have two choices right here. You have the latest release right here, or you have the previous release, whichever previous release would be at the top. Now, a lot of people will not take the latest release. Some will, some won't. Most people I've heard will take the previous release because most of the bugs, if not all, are worked out of the previous releases, and there's still some bugs left in the latest release. Yeah, it's still a little buggy here and there. So a lot of people will opt out of the latest release. Excuse me for that. And we'll get rid of that. And they'll go for the previous release. But I went for the latest release. Seems to work fine for me. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on that. I already have it, but I'm showing you how to do it for your benefit. So we'll go ahead and click on it. It takes you to another page, and it shows you a zip file here. So you do have to have some sort of zip software to open this sucker. And you go ahead and you click on that link, and it takes you to um, your window, and it will take you to wherever you saved. Um, it will take you to wherever you saved. See, I had to look for where I saved. Well, not only saved my software, but where it uh, uh, distributed the software to use. But I have it here, and I opened it up, and it gave me this right here. So what I did was I clicked on the application from the zip. I'm not supposed to get that. I'm not supposed to get that. There we are. Okay, and it'll give you this window right here, and it'll give you a default um, address where it's going to save uh, your software suite. Now you can save it to wherever you want, or you can just leave it at the default. I just left it default, and saved it, and then you just come down here to click next. All right, and it gives you three little boxes up at the top for additional shortcuts. Of course, you're gonna want these shortcuts, or at least two of them. You're gonna want the VPC joystick setup, and you're also gonna want the VPC joystick tester. I opted to get the VPC shift tool because I think that has something to do with the mode dial right here. So I went ahead and I got that, and I clicked next. And when I clicked next, that produced three shortcuts on my desktop. Now I'm not going to do that because I don't need three more shortcuts. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of this and get out of this. Now, as you can see right here, I have made a folder. Now might want to make a folder to put on your desktop to put the three shortcuts in, so it's easily accessible. So what you want to do now, once you get that, make that folder, and then open that, and then put those three shortcuts in there, or two shortcuts, whatever you wanted, and you open that folder up. You click on joysticks setup. There it is. We don't need that anymore. We'll move this over a little bit. Move that up. Okay, now, um, depending on how you had things set up when you downloaded Virpil controls and um, set up your preferences and stuff like that, you may wind up in the Pro window, like what I have. A Pro window, you'll have all five buttons. You'll have the access button, you have the button. It's kind of redundant, but yeah. You'll have the LED button and the profile button and the firmware button. Now, you'll have all those buttons in the Pro, plus this is what you'll have. You'll have this whole section right here and this window right here. But if you are in the light version, this is what it'll look like. You'll have two buttons that are short. So you won't have the button, and you won't have the LED button. So a lot of people will use the Pro because it gives you more choices. So what you want to do first of all is, if you don't have it chosen, right here it says Virpil Control Throttle MT50 CM2 Virpil Control Joy, and then it follows it up with 200 325 or 200325. Okay, if it's not selected, you want to select that. See, it's how it's highlighted blue. All right, now after it's highlighted and you got it selected, do you want to come down here? See, I already have a few things set up, but don't worry about that. You come down here and you click on firmware. Now, this controller firmware file path, I didn't really mess with it because I just left it at the default, because if I try to mess with it, it might screw it up. So I would probably just advise just leave it at the default so nothing gets screwed up or anything like that. After you click on the firmware and you got this window up here, click on Start Auto Firmware Update. Then you'll get this little box that pops up that says, Warning! Firmware update will be done automatically in 5 steps. During the update process, the program window may blink. It will be necessary to create a new profile after the update. Now, what that's saying is, hey, it's a soft warning. Do not have 2 Virpil controls connected at once, because if you do, you're going to wind up turning either one or the other into a useless piece of junk. It's going to brick one or the other, and you're going to have a very expensive paperweight. So my advice to you is to update the firmware in one and do everything that you need to do with it. Disconnect it, then connect the other one. Update the firmware on that one. Do everything you need to do with that one, and then you're set. You can connect both of them and you're fine. But don't do both together, or you're gonna give it's gonna you're gonna give yourself a lot of heartache. So, but it's just a soft warning. So after all that's said and done, you click on the OK button, and it starts the firmware update. Okay, I think it's done. Once that's complete, it says you need to go to the profile and select your base and grip to make the profile. So that's pretty straightforward. You come down here, you click on your profile button. Now, since I've already done this, I already know that I have the MongoosT-50 CM2. It's on the left side, and I have the 5-way mode modifier selected. So I'm going to come down here again, and I'm going to select. You want to select your base, whatever kind of base you have, whether it be a base for a stick or your throttle or what have you, and you select it. And it will show a picture of it. Like, for instance, this is showing my picture of my MongoosT-50 CM2. And then you come over here, and since I don't have a grip, a lot of people do, but since I don't have a grip, I only have a option to pick a modification. So I'm going to be using the 5-way mode modifier in the future here. And so I'm going to choose the 5-way mode modifier. And of course, my throttle is on the left-hand side. And the split to virtual device by 32 buttons, I'm not exactly sure how that works. Uh, I think it splits the buttons on the throttle somehow. A lot of people play Elite Dangerous, and I think it it splits the buttons in half because there's a lot of switches and there's a lot of functionality to this thing, and I don't think that Windows recognizes all of it. I don't know. I'm not up to snuff on this part. If somebody has some insight on this, could you please leave a comment down in the comment section, and so it gives me a little bit of insight on it. That would really be appreciated. The next box is a no twist grip. I don't have twist on my, well, I do have twist, but it's a different grip. So, I can have twist or not, it doesn't matter, but I have rudder pedals. So after all that's all selected and all done and stuff like that, you come down to this button and you click create profile. Okay, now that creates your profile right there. Now after that is done, you come up here to your access button and you check out your throttle now. Now, number one, or axis number one, is the left-hand side of your throttle. So you move it back and forth. See how the numbers up here are kind of out of sync? And then the right side, axis number 2, see how the numbers are kind of out of sync? A little wonky, you might say. What you need to do now is you need to come down here to calibrate axes. So you click on this button. Now see all these flipping back and forth? These are your axes. Anyway, there's like 5 of them. You have to take each axis, the left side, the right side, your flaps, this Xbox controller right here. It's like an Xbox controller, and your slider. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you have to calibrate them by moving them back and forth at least 4 times. So starting with the left-hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll go 5. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the flaps. See how everything is starting to straighten out now? Now come up here to this little controller here. You move it up, down, up, down, up, down, and then you move it to the left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay. And then you come over to your slider and you move that down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And what's cool about it is there's a little detent right in the middle, so I'll leave it right there. And then you come over to this button here and save calibration to profile. Click on that, let it load up. Come up here, save Virpil device. Load it. Okay. Now, see the values now? Now the values are 0, 100, 0. Now the right side, 100, 0. The flaps, 100, 0. The little Xbox controller is at 50, 0, 100. Move it to the right, 0, 100. Then the slider, 0, 100. So everything is set for these values. Now, the next part of it, pretty much the final part of the basic setup of your throttle is coming down here to the access to button or the customizable ranges. Now, they're different for every airframe. So you might want to experiment a little bit, but the access number is never different. The result button for you may be different, but the access number won't be different. The access number, you pull these two access numbers for the left side and the right side, 1 and 2. You bring them down here for your throttle. So what you do is, under access number, you put 1. Now, I fly the F-14B Tomcat, and I found the ranges from and to for 5% to 10% work good for me. Those are for the idle. So I put 5 to 10. And I work, all depends on where you want to start on this window right here. This is your you do a little bit of flipping back and forth sometimes. This window right here is your it's your sometimes it's a little bit hard to explain. These buttons right here are the buttons that Windows sees. They're your logic buttons. Those buttons are all in numerical order. These buttons right here are all your physical buttons. Those are the buttons that are actually physically on your controller or on your throttle. This right here, your mode, is if you click on one of these, or like double click on them, your mode is right here. Your pull down arrow. It could be a normal mode. You can invert this mode to do it backwards. You can turn it into a switch. You can toggle it on. You can toggle it off. If it's a dial, you can use it as a dial. If it's an encoder dial for a buffer, the dial, instead of moving really slow, the dial in game will move at the speed of what you're moving your encoder dial on your throttle. So it just kind of catches up in game. So that kind of helps out. So that's what that does. It gives you choices of different modes that you can use on a particular switch. So we'll just leave it on normal. We'll cancel that out. The shift is the shift for your mode dial here. So for instance, this button right here, this physical button is button 49 right here. See how it's inactive, it's active, inactive, active. Now, that is logical button 38. That's what Windows sees. Now, if you take it and put it on number 2, it's still button 49, but now it's logical button 56. So if you go to the next window, which would be VPC Joy Tester, and you push 49, it's lighting up 56, which is what Windows sees. I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of this stuff. So I know a lot of other people are still trying to wrap their head around it. It can get kind of confusing, and that's what I mean. Sometimes you got to have a little bit of patience with it. So I'm still working with it. So bear with me. So my result button for this, um, I'm going to be working from 80 to 81. And I'm going to be using all the buttons from the bottom, working my way up and putting them under my physical button column to line up with my logical button column. So I'm going to click on 80, and I'm going to put 127 in here, and I'm going to click and save. I'm going to keep everything as it is, normal, no shift, no delay for encoders, no turbo for buttons or anything like that. I'm going to click save and next. And notice what the logical named button did. It automatically went to the next logical button, which is 81. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put 128. And then I'm just going to click save because I don't want to go to the next button. I'm just going to click save. And look here, under logical button 80, we have 127. And then under logical button 81, we have 128. Now, since I have both my throttles forward, I'm going to move my left side. And I'm going to move my right side back. Now I'm going to move my left side up. Actually, hold on. Just one minute here. I got to finish this side. I have to come back and I have to finish putting my result button in. So I have to put 127 in there for my left side of my throttle. And then I have to put my right side in. And then save Virpil control device. Okay, now I load Virpil control device. Okay, now we'll go back to the buttons window. Now, when we move the left side of the throttle up, see now 127 lights up active because it moved up 5%. I move it back, now it's inactive. It turned blue. Now I move the right side up. Now that side is active because it moved up between 5 and 10%. Now I move it back. Now it's inactive. Now if you want to check it out on the VPC Joy Tester, you come over here, you click on the Joy Tester, you come over here, you choose your throttle, and you move your left side. See how 80 lights up? And it shows it on the graph down here on the bottom. And it also shows here in this little window, on, off. Now you move your right side. It shows button 81 on. And it also shows it on the graph. Then you move it back, off. And that shows you that everything is working properly. And you go ahead and you close it. It also shows down here in the bottom window 127, 128, access to button, X range 5 to 10%, RY range, or RX range 5 to 10%, excuse me, RY range 5 to 10%. So that's all set up. You have everything set up properly. All your throttle is set up, your access to button is set up, your device setup page is set up here. Your profile is set up, your firmware is set up, everything is all set up. That's your basic setup. as far as getting your throttle up and running. That's about it. That's all I have on this section of getting your throttle up, downloading your software, and getting your throttle up and running. If you have any questions or anything like that, leave them down in the comments. If you'd like to see more videos on the Mongoose T50 CM2 throttle, please leave a comment down in the comment section. If you got anything out of this, leave a comment. Leave a like, leave a subscribe if you want, subscribe. Um, and thank you for stopping by and watching, and we'll catch you guys later. Okay, this has been Mad Hatter. Bye.